Hello, I'm Joel Wolfe from Christian Home Church in Blountstown, Florida. I wanted to talk a few moments about thorns and thistles. Thorns and thistles. In Genesis chapter 3, in the area of verses 17 through 19, there's a description there, and it's after humanity has sinned, and God tells the man, because of sin, the ground now is going to produce thorns and thistles. The process of harvesting crops is now going to be work. There's going to be things that are difficult and cause sweat in that process rather than so easy as it was before. And this is coming about because of sinfulness now in the creation. I was reminded of this passage not too long ago. I was working around the church here, and a few years ago, a hurricane had come through the area and did much damage throughout the region. And in the back area of our church, there were fences some chain link fences that had had trees fallen on them and been blown by the wind, and they were all twisted up. And they have sat there for a little while in that shape. And I was going to clear those out to make the area look better. Well, in the course of time since that hurricane, and maybe even before the hurricane, various plants, various growth has grown up around those fences. And many of them were thorns and thistles and weeds. And in fact, I was thinking of it as I was trying to cut through and get that fencing out of there, that I can remember the old Tarzan shows of him hanging on vines, and some of those vines I thought, the strength of this, I can identify with that. And as I thought of that, I made a comparison to what happens in our lives at times. Sometimes something destructive comes through. Sometimes it's something that is done to us. Sometimes it's choices that we make, and there is a big negative hurt or a big negative sin that we've committed. It can be a variety of things, but that cataclysmic or life-changing or life-injuring event or influencing event with maybe in a destructive way with our walk with God, those things cause damage, but that's not the only damage. Around that, there grows up thorns, thistles, weeds, growth that is intertwined all together within that decision or that event or that wrong or abuse that has been done to us. And sometimes when we're seeking God and coming back to the Lord or wanting to get our life on track and wanting to please Him, God is at work and God is bringing about healing. And we would like it all to just go away and be fixed right away. But quite frankly, because of the presence of sin in life, what is in the natural, thorns and thistles, there's a comparison in the spiritual and in our own growth. Sometimes there are things intertwined with our choices or the things that have impacted us and hurt us. And to get healthy, to get whole, we have to work through a lot of the weeds. We have to clear out the thorns. We have to clear out the thistles. And this can be a process in our lives. It can be discouraging sometimes because sometimes we think, well, God, why don't you just take this away from me? And God does at times work in people's lives and things are just dealt with instantly. But that's not always the case. And God is the determiner of that in life, and there are things that He may not take away right away, but that doesn't mean that He's not calling us in a process of clearing out those thorns, those thistles spiritually that have attached themselves to us. Sometimes it is a process. In 1 Timothy 4, 7, and 8, Paul tells Timothy there, he says, train yourself for godliness, or exercise yourself for godliness. Sometimes getting cleared out of the junk in our lives is something that, just like exercise, just like training, is something that we have to diligently apply ourselves to, rather than be something that is just a one-time event or an immediate deliverance. Likewise, in Hebrews chapter 4, verses 9 through 16, in that area, the author of Hebrews is talking about a rest that is available. But in speaking of that rest, he says, strive to enter, or give diligence to enter that rest. There is something sometimes that we have to work for, that we have to diligently apply ourselves to, and it could take time. And it can be something that seems like, wow, is this never going to come to pass? Well, I believe that it will. And that's one of the deceitful aspects of sin. In Hebrews 3, 12 through 13, the writer there talks about, don't be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. Sin can deceive us by speaking to us that, oh, this is never going to change. Things are always going to be this way. No, don't be deceived by that. Keep applying diligently and exercising yourself toward the things of God. Romans 1, 16 and 17 talks about the gospel. And in the midst of that, as Paul says, he's not ashamed of the gospel. He says that we live by faith. We live by faith. This exercising, this diligence is part of our expression of faith in God, that God, we believe you save us through the gospel, and we believe that even in the midst of the weeds and the junk and the mess that may be in our life right now, we're going to keep believing, keep applying your truth to life, and we're going to trust that through that process, through the process you are leading us in, that we will experience long-term growth in our own self spiritually, cleansing, wholeness, and the kind of health and life that you have for us. And so I wanted to express those thoughts here. And in another setting, another recording, we'll talk about some of the process of that exercising ourselves or giving diligence. So God bless you. Get rid of the thorns and thistles in your life, and don't be discouraged about that process.